All right, we just want to thank you all for coming back. I know we have a few people going to be coming back as we start the evening here this evening. They're on their way. So we're just going to sing a song, and then we're going to close out the Sabbath with a devotional and a bit of a review from last night in a spiritual context. And then we're going to get right into what everybody's been waiting for. And that's how to get this trust started and implemented, how to make it work for you in your life. And I know that this is going to be a blessing for you. How many of you are excited about that tonight? All right, I see a few hands. Praise God. I know we've got a few online who are joining us this evening. We want to welcome you as well. And I'm excited about what we've learned this weekend, aren't you? I see a new ministry getting ready to start here at Norwalk. Don't you see it? We're going to call it the Financial Evangelism Ministry. Wouldn't that be exciting? Let me hear you say it together. Financial evangelism. Can you imagine what would happen if we were to share this knowledge in the community with people, unchurched people, and we share this knowledge with them, and then this will allow us to mingle with them? This could be a brand new ministry for us in this community, right? And we lead them to Christ every step of the way. So let's just bow our heads as we invite God's presence tonight. Gracious Lord, we thank you for the privilege of having this information and giving us the knowledge and the wisdom of how to implement it. Lord, I pray tonight that your Spirit your presence will dwell with us, fill our hearts, lead us, guide us as we delve deeper. In Jesus' name I pray, and for his sake, amen.
Please join me as we sing 526. If you have hymnals, please go to 526, Because He Lives.
They called him Jesus.
more song. Oh my gosh. Ready? Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Before I do any word for the closeout of the devotion portion today, I'm going to close out with a little quick devotion this evening. But before I do, I'm going to have my wife come up and grace us with another song before we close out. And so I'm going to have her do that, and then we're going to get right into the meat and potatoes, everything. Did y'all come for meat and potatoes? Veggie meat, I'm sorry. Veggie meat. Veggie meat and potatoes. I'm sorry. Yeah. So I came for veggie meat and potatoes as well, and we're going to get some. So before we proceed to succeed, then we'll have a seed that is planted. With my wife coming up, that doesn't need any help for me to come up the stairs. Hey, how you doing, young lady? Are you going to give us a special rendition of a special music, a special number of some kind? Well. Acapella, no, that sounds utterly worldly. What are you talking about, acapella? Do you know To God Be the Glory, Peter? You play that for her? See, thank you, God, for a talented pastor. Which version of it? The black version. I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing. Y'all forgive me. I'm at home in Texas. Y'all forgive me. Y'all made me feel so at home that I got to do a special number, a special kind of version of that. Anyway, she can play any version she wants to.
Praise God. To God be the glory for the great things he has done. This is my tribute. To God be the glory. Praise God. Yes. How can I give thanks for the things you have done for me? Things so undeserved. You even came to give your life for me. The voices of a million angels cannot express my gratitude. All that I am and ever hope to be, I owe it all to thee. To God be the glory. To God be the glory. To God be the glory for the things he has done. Just let me live my life and let it be pleasing, Lord, to thee. Should I gain any praise, let it go to Calvary. With his blood, he has saved me. With his power, He has done. He has done. Praise God.
Thank you, Peter. And I don't know why I keep calling you Peter. That sounds so condescending. Pastor Baptiste, thank you very much. And thank you, Janita, for that beautiful song. Y'all, there are two Baptistes that have been in my life, and I just want to tell y'all about the two Baptistes that have been in my life. Now, Pastor Baptiste is in my life now in California. And the first Baptiste is in my life is Brent Baptiste, who gave me the Bible studies back in Fort Worth. He was the tent master at the time, and he gave my brothers and I the Amazing Facts Bible lesson studies for a period of 6 weeks during the summer, hot summer of August the 22nd, 1981. And he took time patiently. He was the tent master at the time, and he would put down the flaps of the tent. And then he would go in there and he would set up a table and we would sit down and we would go over the Bible studies with him. And we enjoyed engaging him because he was such an engaging person when it came to Bible studies. He loved giving Bible studies. And so Pastor Baptiste, then he finished up after 6 weeks of study. We decided that we wanted to go ahead and get baptized. And so we did. August 22nd, 1981, we became baptized, Seventh-day Adventist young men in the church at 15, 14, and 17 years old. 14, 15, 17 years old. And so to God be the glory. All three of us have never left the church. We have now been members there for 42 years. And many families have been baptized as a result of us being there. And even one of our sister churches that was started, many of the individuals who were in our sister church, we had given Bible studies to, and many of them, after 30 years, were still in the church. I've always been a big, firm believer in fellowship when it comes to church members. One of the things that happens in a lot of evangelism, there's a lot of food evangelism that goes on. There's something about a teenage boy or a teenage girl that when you feed them after a Sabbath service and you dare to feed them, you will keep them a lot longer. Isn't that right? Can I testify to that? Young man, can I testify to that? When you get fed, you feel like staying around a little while longer, right? If no more than to shake the food down to your toes, right, like this. Yeah, you stay around longer, when and you get comfortable with the fact that God is able through fellowship, to be able to engage your young people. All right? And so I wanted to share a devotion with you real quickly. That was just a prelude, but this is going to be brief. And I want you to turn in your Bibles to 1 Kings chapter 17. Some of you already know where I'm going. 1 Kings chapter 17. And there's a story there about Elijah and the woman of Zarephath and how during the time of famine, what had taken place in the house is that a woman had wanted to just take some food and some cakes and enjoy them and then say goodbye. As Tony said earlier, she wanted to commit foodicide. She wanted to end it all right there. She thought that was going to be her last meal. But this selfish preacher, she thought, came along and asked for her, instead of making the cake for her and her son, this dude had the audacity to ask her to feed him first. And she was like, you got to be kidding me, in a sense, in a modern day sense. You got to be kidding me. Feed you, and then just let me and my son starve? What nerve of a man would do something like that? Would y'all do that? If Pastor Baptiste came by your house and it was a famine in the land and there was no more water hardly and anything like that, would you give him the last piece of hot water cornbread? Do y'all know anything about hot water cornbread? Is that a thing of Louisiana and Texas, or do people in California make hot water cornbread? I want to make sure I'm in the right place. Raise your hand if you know what hot water cornbread is. Oh, see, well, I only see the African Americans' hand just about going up. I don't hardly see anybody's hands going up. I didn't think that was an ethnic thing. I didn't think that was an ethnic question, so I was trying to be neutral and general here, but I can see that by the show of hands that is a limited resource of request there. So, okay, so all right, hot water cornbread. Cornbread then. Take out the hot water part and just put cornbread there. Anybody familiar with the making of cornbread? Okay, Elijah asked the woman of Zarephath to make him some cornbread, and there was no beans, by the way. So there was no gas going to be passed or anything like that. Just give me some cornbread, and I'll eat the cornbread, and you and your son, well, you'll be blessed if you let me do that. Now, that takes some faith, right? So you want us to trust you to make this cornbread for you, and we're going to eat what? And he tells them simply in so many words, don't worry about that. You just take care of the man of God, and God's got you. And she looking at him with the look in her eyes of, that's easier said than done, but I'll nonetheless take you at your word. So let's pick up on the story real quickly and see what the real word says in 1 Kings chapter 17. 1 Kings chapter 17, I'm just going to go right to the end part of the story and pick up on verse 12. And she said, as the Lord thy God liveth, I have not a cake, but a handful of meal in a barrel, and a little oil in a cruse. And behold, I am gathering 2 sticks, and I may go in and dress it for me and my son, that we may eat and die. Food suicide. Brother Tony? And Elijah said unto her, fear not, go and do as thou hast said, but make me therefore a little cake first, and bring it unto me, and after make for thee and for thy son. For thus saith the Lord God of Israel, the barrel of meal shall not waste, neither shall the cruse of oil fail, until the day that the Lord sendeth rain upon the earth. Wow, okay. And she went and did according to the saying of Elijah. And she and he and her house did eat many days. How many days, y'all? Many days. She and her son ate many days. And the barrel of meal wasted not, neither did the cruse of oil fail, according to the word of the Lord, which he spake by Elijah. And it came to pass after these things that the son of the woman, the mistress of the house, fell sick, and his sickness was so sore that there was no breath left in him. And she said unto Elijah, what have I to do with thee, O thou man of God? Art thou come unto me to call my sin to remembrance, and to slay my son? And he said unto her, give me thy son. And he took him out of her bosom, and carried him up into a loft, where he abode, and laid him upon his own bed. And he cried unto the Lord, and said, O Lord, my God, hast thou also brought evil upon the widow with whom I have sojourned, by slaying her son? And he stretched himself upon the child 3 times, and cried unto the Lord, and said, O Lord, my God, I pray thee, let this child's soul come into him again. And the Lord heard the voice of Elijah, and the soul of the child came into him again, and he revived. And Elijah took the child, and brought him down unto the chamber into the house, and he delivered him into his mother. And Elijah said, see, thy son liveth. And the woman said, no, Elijah. And the woman said to Elijah, Now by this I know that thou art a man of God, and the word of the Lord is in thy mouth is truth. Can you picture that scene? How many of you would let a total stranger that came in your house first all ask for a piece of cornbread before you and your son gets sick and your son dies, and you would now trust the same guy to take your child upstairs? And it sounds kind of weird to lay on top of your child. Are y'all listening to me? In this modern day time, you came up there to check on what's going on with your son, and the prophet is laying on top of your son. You're like, what? What you doing? You're laying on top of my son, trying to bring the life back into him. Dude, if you don't get off my son, right? Y'all know what I'm talking about. Y'all don't sit there like y'all know what I'm talking about. Okay? How many of y'all would have enough faith to believe in what the prophet has said that it's going to happen with the son by him laying on the son and doing what he does? Well, she apparently stayed downstairs. That's why much trust she had. When the son, he's dead. There's nothing he can do. He's gone. Life is gone out of him. So naturally, whatever you got to do, go do what you got to do. And if it happens, it happens. If it don't, my son is one dead son. You don't brought evil to my household. But unfortunately, God had blessed him, and God blessed her son and restored him. And as a result of having done so, notice that there's nowhere in the scripture where it says that while they were receiving the meal and the oil, there's nowhere in the story where it says where the son or the mother went and checked inside the pot to figure out what is this magic that meal just keeps coming up in this pot and oil just keeps bubbling up in this pot. What's going on with that? I know I only had enough for me and my son, and we were going to die, right? So how is this miracle working that the pot is now has oil in it still after several days of using it? How is it that the oil still is there and the meal is still there? It kind of reminds you of the feeding of the 5,000 with the 2 fish and the 5 loaves of bread. Where in the world is that bread coming from to the point where there's 12 baskets full after the fact? Not only did it feed all of them, but there was 12 baskets full left and fish left over. How does that happen? I'm talking to you, God, about the abundance of God. That's what I wanted to follow up with you. God's abundance and God's provision is that his children are taken care of in every which way is possible. His children are taken care of. And if God can do that in a world of lack, what do you think he can do in a world of abundance? And we're going to talk about today, this evening, for Succeed, we're going to talk about the world of abundance, what God can do with little, when little becomes much in the master's hand. And so I don't know about you, but I would rather put my little in the master's hand than to put a lot in my broker's hand, because that's why they call brokers, because they leave you broke. And when you get through with, they get through with your investments, and you come to them and say, what happened now? Oh, well, we were just telling you, we lost about $30,000 or $40,000. And you say, you lost how much? And you go out to the car, and you're walking in the parking lot, and you're pacing back and forth, and your Edward Jones representative is in there, casual, calm, because he don't got his money. They don't got their money. But you lost some money in your stock, and you're pretty upset about it. Anybody been upset about some loss of money in stock? Raise your hand if you've been upset about some stock loss. Come on now, come on, raise your hand. Be real. You don't lost some money in the stock market and you were upset. You were a little frustrated that you looked at that account and it was pretty depleted. And they always tell you, have enough faith. Don't look at it. Yeah, just don't look at it for 3 to 5 years. Don't look at it, right? Because if you look at it, it might scare you half to death, okay? Especially after 2008. Whoo, boy. Have mercy, don't look at that account. Yes. You're going to get brokered, man. I'm telling you. That's why I said, Tony, they got you broke. They say, I got you broke. I mean, brother, bro, I got you, bro. I mean, broker. Yeah, that's how they, that's how they form those words. Broke and broker. It sounds pretty close. So yeah, so it's phenomenal how sometimes when you invest with people like a broker and you end up with a lot less, and you had matching. The job was matching. They had matching and everything like that. You really felt good about what God was doing for you. You felt blessed, and all of a sudden, it's gone. And so, what we're going to talk to you tonight about how do you keep some of your investment, and how do you be able to take some of that investment and make something additional happen to it that was not even possible to happen to it before. That's what we're going to talk about this evening concerning your trust. How many of you want to know how you can have a trust that can make money? Okay, see the hands, all right? How many just curious, you just want to know what the secret sauce is? Just raise your hand. You just want to know what the secret sauce is? Okay, all right, okay, all right, got you. Okay, well, Russell's going to tell you about some of the secret sauce tonight, and he's going to share with you some detailed things. We're going to give a 5-minute summary of what we did Friday night. And then he's going to share with you what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to close out the Sabbath and have some engagement, answer some questions that you might have, and then we're going to go from there. But before we do that, for this part of this devotion, are there any questions that you have concerning anything that we've already talked about today before we retire to the next presentation and transition to that? Is there any other questions that you had for me before I turn the floor over to Russell to begin answering those questions? Anybody else? You have any questions concerning today? We're going to put up our phone number. Get your pen and paper out. Let me go ahead. Those of you who don't have my number, let me give you my number real quickly so you'll have that. You can freely engage me. If you do, make sure you text me your name and your number. And please, if you will, give me your email as well, because I'm going to email some of you who were talking earlier to me about some information about your sciatica issue. Well, Wajane Massage, we have a newsletter that I'm going to, because of our engagement this weekend, I'm going to send you that newsletter absolutely free. It's a 12-page newsletter. It's very color and detail, and it tells you about how you can resolve your sciatica issues and how you can deal with that. And Russell and I, we just have a bleeding heart, don't we? We're just so used to and accustomed to giving away information and material without charge. We just try to do that. That newsletter that we actually have is worth quite a bit throughout the year, and but we're going to give it away free to let you see some of the information. So if you have, if you know that you or you know someone in the church or yourself, a friend, a family, a neighbor that's struggling with sciatica issues, we're going to give you that newsletter to give you some inside scoop on what can help you to get past that pain. Okay? Is that okay with everybody? All right. So my number is 817-302, and those of you on social media, if you're writing that down, 817-302-6777. And when Russell comes up and he engages you with Succeed, he's going to also give you his phone number as well, so you can have access to him to ask questions about estate planning and any other information in detail about the trust that we know about. Okay? 817-302-6777. And if you want to go onto our website to check out our website, let me give you our website real quickly. If you listen very carefully, I'm going to spell it out for you. It's Wajane Massage, W-A-J-O-N-A-Y, Wajane, W-A-J-O-N-A-Y, massage, at yahoo.com. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm in the email mode. WajaneMassage.com. W-A-J-O-N-A-Y, WajaneMassage.com. People often ask me, where did you get the name from of Wajane? Sometimes people think it's a Japanese company, but it is an American company. Wajane means the W-A, you'll see it on the website. The W-A simply means Wa, which is Japanese, which means God has worked. God has this company works in harmony with the community, or one who prefers the community over oneself. That's what WA, W-A means. And then John, J-O-N, is Hebrew. Of course, it's part of my name. Hebrew, which means God has been gracious or God has shown favor. And then the A-Y is just simply the English version of affirmation of vote. The A's have it, the nays don't, kind of like that. So the compository meaning of Wajane is God has graciously affirmed this business as it works in harmony with the community. That's what Wajane means, all right? Compository meaning. You'll see that actually on the website. If you go to our website, wajanemassage.com, you'll see that on the website. It'll explain that to you, okay? Wajane Massage. All right. And we also, when you send me your email, your text message, your name, I will also send you the link for our podcast, for our program that's going to be on our Zoom class on Monday and Tuesday. Part 1 on Monday and Part 2 on Tuesday is the full version. Those of you who was here Friday, you got part of it. You didn't get the whole thing on Part 1, but you will on that call. You'll get that Zoom call. You'll get the whole part of Part 1, and then Part 2 you'll get on Tuesday, the whole part of that as well. Okay? Part 1 and Part 2, that's on the Zoom that we'll send you out, that information as well. And we'll send out the newsletter to those of you who would like that as well. And then after next week, we will send you the podcast information that might be helpful to you on various subjects that we'll be having ongoing engagement with you concerning that. All right? If there are no further questions, I am done with my part, and I want to bring up an amazing young man that has been with Succeed for 14 years, and also he has specialized in trust in the last 8 years. And we are blessed in the Adventist Church to have one of our own to be in this expertise area. And so I'm going to let Russell come and share with you what he shares with you best, and you will be blessed according to that. He has a master's degree in business administration, and he also has been a member of the Adventist Church all his natural-born life, because his father was an Adventist pastor as well, which he was my pastor at one point in time, and he has since passed away. But thanks be to God, his mom is a very close friend of the family as well. So, Russell, without further ado, come on up.
Thank y'all so much. Happy Sabbath to everybody. I know Sabbath is coming to an end, but it's still happy. I'm happy to be here. I'm Russell Thompson, and it's a joy to be here. You know, I am from California, so I was born in Kansas City, Missouri, but my father moved to Compton, California, of all places, and I grew up in Compton, California, believe it or not, right? And got to experience a lot of things out here. I went to Bellflower Adventist Elementary School along with the Long Beach. I know Long Beach is not in existence no more. I actually went to Linwood, too, and I know Linwood is not in existence no more. So there's a lot of memory around here that I have. But, you know, thanks to my parents, the late Helvius L. Thompson, the second 50-year veteran in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, man, preached for 50-plus years. And so big shots out to Pops, man. I miss him a lot, but he was my inspiration. And he told me to push this message into the Adventist system, all right, because we so well need it. Well, what we're going to talk about tonight is how our church actually got structured, how it got started, and then why, you know, our pioneer, Ellen G. White, you know, how many books does Ellen G. White have? Y'all, do y'all understand that is intellectual property? She was dealing back, and we're going to talk about this because she was dealing back in some things that had to be protected, and as of today, all her books are copyrighted, okay? And we're going to talk to you how trust plays in part with that. So we're going to get started. I represent a company called Succeed Consulting Firm, and we're going to go right through this presentation. We're going to take some questions at the end, and what we're going to do is make sure that everybody understands the difference between trust and will, not just trust, but a special type of trust. We're going to talk about an irrevocable common law trust tonight for this presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. There we go. All right, there we go. All right, so I'm represented by a team. I have my MBA from the University of Phoenix, but I also have an attorney, Ariel Comer. Ariel Comer is a special type of attorney. When I met her, she was only licensed in Texas. But after having a conversation with her about common law and irrevocable trust, she went and got licensed and did the research in Washington, D.C. And she's also an estate planning attorney and a real estate attorney, and so she helps us with all of our trusts. We also have a lot of representation from a lot of other people that help us with life insurance policies, tax returns. We have a CPA in-house and also an IRS enrolled agent that helps sign off on our tax returns. So we are well put together staff to bring this information to you, and this didn't happen overnight. This happened, over the course of time to put this team together, so I'm very thankful for the people that I work with. And then John is my partner that we work with together. We bring this information across the country. We're even starting to bring it in other actual countries as well, across this country and other countries of the world. And we're so thrilled to actually bring this to you and to our people, which is our Seventh-day Adventist family, okay? So we want to make sure you're very well educated behind what we're going to talk to you tonight. All right. What happened? All right. All right. Let's see there we go. All right. So for the last 8 years, I put myself in the position where I wanted to know everything about estate planning and trust. So I've actually bought several trusts. I bought a trust in New York. I bought a trust out here in Los Angeles. I bought a trust in Texas. I wanted to know everything about different types of trust. And so over the last 8 years, bills of sale, promissory notes, how your actual tax implication is in a trust. Most important thing, the education behind the actual matter is what I wanted to know and what I want to make sure everybody's aware of. So again, we're going to break this into 2 parts, okay? We're going to do everything tonight. We're going to talk about the history, the laws, and provisions of the trust, and we're going to show you how you can get it started with this, all right? So I'd like to start with the population of the United States of America. 350 plus million people live here. Can you believe that, right? And out of that percentage of people that live here, 45% of all Americans make their money on labor. That means that you're getting taxed while you're making the money, okay? You can also be double taxed while you're making the money in some senses, but basically you're being taxed as you make the money. But 50% of the actual population is getting some money on the government. That means we're getting some Social Security, we're getting some type of food supplement, we're doing something to get something from that government, and that's 50% of our population. That's over 175,000 people that are getting some type of government assistance. That leaves only 3 to 5% of all Americans making their money on interest. What is interest? Okay, interest is basically making money while you're sleeping, making money where you don't have to use your day-to-day operation or your 100% of your effort to actually do it. So how is that being done? Well, it's being done because they understand how to build generational wealth. We have to learn how to leverage a few things here. Number one is going to be credit. Okay? Do you know that you have an actual opportunity to establish not only personal credit, but business credit? And you can use the combination of both of those to actually build generational wealth. Number two, interest. You got to figure out some form of interest that you're going to create in order to actually create some generational wealth. But the reason why I'm here today is because I want to make sure that everybody understands how to avoid the double taxation. Okay? There comes a state and a federal type of tax that you're going to have to actually pay if you don't understand how to operate through trust. So the trust is the most secure financial instrument on the planet. And again, this is why we actually use it when we actually operate. So we're going to talk about double taxation. Trust versus will. Do you understand that a will, it has no privacy? Okay, it's a ticket to probate court, like John said. Okay, there's no tax benefits. It has no, basically no asset protection. There's going to be an estate tax assessed on every asset that you move out of your name to a person that's actually living. They're going to assess an estate tax. It only works upon your death. People say it's less expensive. Yeah, it is less expensive in the front part of it. But on the back part of it, it's more expensive because you got to hire an attorney, okay? You got to actually go and pay the court fees. And like John said, they can charge up to 40% of your estate. So they're in a position to actually take it from you, right? But they don't tell you that up front. You can't do business in a will that has no EIN number, therefore you cannot protect any assets. But in a trust, the trust is totally different because a trust is a federal instrument, not a state instrument. California cannot draw up a trust. Okay? All California can do is use a federal trust instrument, but they can actually put it into their jurisdiction if you're not careful. So a trust can be private if it's correct, it's set up correctly. It has no probate, which what we want. We do not want to send our kids and our family through probate, okay? It has a lot of tax benefits if you use it correctly. It has asset protection. It works while you're living, right? It's less expensive to me because this instrument can be transferred to the next generation. And the next generation. Matter of fact, it's going to outlive you. It's going to outlive your next generation. It's going to outlive the next generation and the next generation, right? Because it is a trust. Again, it has an EIN number that allows you to build assets. So what do wealthy people do when they build actual generational wealth? Number one, they put themselves in a position where they never lose money. The biggest way we're losing money, y'all, is taxation. Would y'all agree? That's one of the major ways we're losing money. Number two, again, people that are wealthy never forget the rule number one. But what I want to share with you tonight is that access is actually better than ownership. Why is access better than ownership? Well, let me tell you why. Ownership comes with taxation. The minute you say you own it, the minute the actual state got their hand out for taxes, and the federal government has their hand out for taxes. Okay? We want to make sure that you understand stable versus inflatable, double taxation versus the tax rate. I'm going to show you the tax rate. Okay? I'm going to talk about credit versus debit, flexible versus liquid. Okay? Liquid assets are taxable. Why do you think when you bring the money out the 401k, they're going to tax you? Because that's liquid. You can get the money out, but they're going to tax you for it, okay? We use compound interest versus simple interest. We use EIN numbers versus socials. And of course, at all rate, we're always going to operate through an estate versus probate. So I'm going to go all the way back to the laws of antiquity. These are the laws that existed before the United States of America was even in play. You had common law, which is the law of judges. Guess where the common law comes from, y'all? It comes from Israel. Who was the first judge of Israel? Anybody know? Well, they give Samuel the credit, but actually Moses was the first judge. And Moses' uncle came to him and said, Moses, what are you doing? Moses said, well, I stand the people up in front of me, and they come to me, and I make a judgment. Moses, he said, you're doing that wrong. You need to make tribe elders or judges with an S on it, because you can't be the judge for everybody. And so common law is the law of judges, not one judge. When you go to probate court, guess what you're going in front of? One judge. When you're in estate planning and you go through actually common law, guess what you're going in front of? Multiple judges. So there's somebody called the Supreme Court that has how many judges, y'all? 9 justices. Now, do you think that they're going to come up with a better decision versus one justice? Absolutely. Okay? They can't show no biases. So if that judge that day has a bad day, then guess what? You got a bad estate that day, because guess what? He had a bad day, and he made the ruling on your actual estate. There's something called civil law, which is the law of code. Listen, lawmakers got tired of actually seeing people in front of them, so they just say, you know what? We're just going to put you in a code. If you break this code, we're going to actually penalize you. Customary law you will never see again in the world, and religious law, again, is in some certain parts of the world. Now, this is right off Google. And what this shows is basically the common law structure. Now, there's common law countries across the world, but we're talking about countries that started as a common law country. okay? That started. That's important. Do you know that the United States of America started as a common law country? What does that mean? That means they didn't have no civil law when they started. They didn't have no statutory law when they started. The only law they had was common law, okay? But you see the rest of the world is covered in red, except, United States of America, Canada, and Australia. And the reason why the world is covered in red is because Rome ruled the entire world at some point. Civil law comes from Rome. The same taxation that Christ was complaining about is the same taxation that you are actually paying. The same thing, because it comes from the same people, okay? So common law is basically the law of judges, as you see right there, plural, that make rulings for a country, okay? Probate is the law of one judge that's going to make a ruling for your estate, okay? So statutory law, again, is a law of the state. It's under the UCC code, and this allows the law to create their own jurisdiction, their own set of laws, their own codes, and their own ordinances that you have to follow at any point in time to avoid penalty. So that is statutory law. So you now have to adhere to the federal and to the state of being double regulated and double taxed. What is the difference between common law and civil law? Common law says basically here, you're free. You're responsible. We pay our taxes. We are good citizens. We go to work. We go to church. We're Christians. Why do we need somebody over us to monitor us? We don't. But if you let civil law tell it, civil law says, I don't think so. Matter of fact, we're going to create thousands of laws, California. See? And we're going to create, laws to limit your freedom, responsibility, and because you are a liability to our government. So we're going to make sure we have thousands of laws that if you break it at any point in time, you're going to either get penalized, you're going to either be put in prison, or you're going to get fined. Those are what's going to happen when you break their codes and their statutory ordinances that they put in place. But let's make sure that we understand where we come from. 13 unions came together to be a country, but they did not claim themselves as one country. They claimed themselves to be independent. Now, in order for this to happen, there had to be a constitution put in place. But the constitution had to be structured to where it can protect three things. Number one, it had to protect boundary, okay? Because you had 13 unions coming together, and they had to protect their boundary. Number two, when you protect boundary, you can protect property, right? Once you protect property, then you can protect assets. That's why somebody cannot come up on your home, because your home is private property under what, y'all? Not statutory law, common law, okay? That's where your privacy comes in under common law. Statutory law is going to come in 1868. As you can see, our country started back in 1776. And this is when actually statutory and civil law came in the 14th Amendment, when people were given the right to vote. So this brought in the public sector. This is why now you can actually register a business under the state. Okay, you can be a sole proprietor, you can be a LLC, you can be a S Corp, a C Corp, even a nonprofit. What's the problem with this? That they're registered. Now, anybody know anything about being registered? When you register for school, when you register for anything with the state, it becomes a security. Now, nobody knows what I'm talking about when I say security. You think I'm talking about protection. No, I'm talking about a financial instrument that now the actual government is trading. So you didn't know that all the things that you registered, the government trades. It makes money in the black market off of you. So let's just go through your whole life here. You went and got a marriage license? Well, they making money off of that. You went and registered your kids for school? They making money off that. You registered to be to vote? They making money off of that. Anything that's registered is a security. And Fidelity is trading it in your Social Security name. That's the public sector. But guess what? Nobody knew that there was a private sector. This means that nothing can be traded. That means that this is private. There's nothing registered, okay? It's only on the federal government. We can have a business trust because a business trust can actually own the assets of the business. We can have a beneficial or a family trust because the beneficial or family trust owns the assets of the family. We have an investment trust because you shouldn't have no investments in your name. You're going to do investments, you need to do it from a trust. We're going to show why. Charitable giving. We shouldn't be giving the church no money out of our social. It should be coming from a charitable trust. And I'm going to show you why here in a minute, okay? Now, our government has 3 branches: the judicial, the legislative, and the executive. There's only one branch of the government that's operating under common law. That is the judicial branch. Now, the judicial branch was given the power of jurisdiction over the entire country. How do you think California got its boundaries? The Supreme Court. Okay? That's because they're in charge of jurisdiction. Legislation and the executive branch are in charge of basically enforcing the jurisdiction, right? But let's make sure that what the Supreme Court ruled. In 1894, the Congress came to the Supreme Court and said, sir, or sirs, can we tax individuals? Guess what the Supreme Court said? It's unconstitutional. Did y'all hear that? They came back in 1913. 1913, not 20-some years later. And guess what the Supreme Court said again? It is unconstitutional. So how in the world are they taxing you? Well, let me tell you why. Because you didn't know, and I didn't know, that they turned you into a corporation. Now, how do I know that you're a corporation? In my master's degree program, the first thing they taught me was anything that's in capital letters represents a corporation. Now, I want y'all to pull out your driver's license and look that it's in capital letters. You pull out your Social Security card, guess what? That's in capital letters. You pull out a utility bill, Lord have mercy, that's in capital letters. You pull out a credit card statement, my goodness, that's in capital letters. They are taxing the corporation SSN number of you, not the individual of you, and that's how they're doing it. So in order to avoid that taxation, we set up a common law trust. Now, I want you to see what it says right here. It says referred as a pass-through agreement, which means that the profits are passed through to the beneficiaries, like a statutory trust. Common law trusts offer increased privacy and security like a statutory trust, but they are based, here it is. This is the difference. It's based on the advanced tax ruling of the Supreme Court. Now, watch this. Anytime you actually go under the Supreme Court and enter into Article 1 of Section 10 of the Constitution, that means you and I have the right to enter into a private contract. That's what it says. That's what the Constitution says. That's why you don't have to hire a real estate attorney to sell your house, because you got the privilege of common law. That's why you can represent yourself in the own court of law. Why? That's your privilege as common law. That's why they can't force you to hire an attorney. Why? Because if they force you to hire an attorney, you can sue the government, because that's coercion. So they cannot force you to put an attorney in place when it comes to your estate planning. You have the right to enter into a private contract between one another if that's what you want to do for your estate. So let's make sure that we understand some common laws. Common laws say basically these are the laws of the country, of the federal government, not the state. Okay? What is this actual federal government saying? That knowing nothing is not an excuse. See, we know more statutory laws than common law. But it's saying right here, UCC 1-2-102, knowing not the law is not an excuse. Okay? 28 UCC 3002 Section 15 says, guess what? Not only are you a corporation, but you thought you were living in a country. I'm sorry to tell you that the country is not a country, it's a corporation too. Okay? And it tells you right there in the tax code. They're telling you that they are a corporation. They're also telling you that the national debt does not belong to you. It belongs to who? The United States of America. Okay? They're also telling you that basically the United States of America filed bankruptcy in 1933, but they covered it up with something called the Great Depression. And they actually put in all the acts of 1933, called the Banking Act of 1933, the Standard Act of 1933, the Gold Standard Act of 1930, the Social Security Act of 1933. But nobody knows the private tax code. All we know is the public tax code. That's what your CPA knows. Your CPA doesn't know that when you start going up into the 600s of the IRS tax code, that you can operate a no capital gains tax-free deferred trust under a tax code, 643B? You can operate a tax-free private foundation under a tax code, 6033A? Well, we're going to show you that we're not talking, this is not Russell Thompson and John talking. We're going to show you that the IRS has its own tax codes that back what we're saying here, okay? So statutory trusts are trusts that are drawn up by the state. Who is a licensed attorney licensed by? Who are they licensed by? The state. They can't be licensed by a federal government. They're licensed by a state. That means that, guess what? They can only put your trust in what? That state. They can't even put your trust in another state. They can only put the trust in the jurisdiction that they are in, okay? And that is a statutory trust. So if you live in California, you let an attorney draw up your trust, guess where your jurisdiction is, your trust is? It's in California. There's no other way around it. So it took me a minute to figure this out, y'all, because I was trying to figure out how does this happen. But then when they left the province of Washington, D.C. open, y'all. Now listen to me. You cannot make state laws for California being in California. Can't make laws for California being in California. Why? Because you're already under the jurisdiction of California. The only way you can make laws for California is that you got to go to a jurisdiction that has no jurisdiction. Washington, D.C. is not a state. Therefore, all the lawmakers can come to this jurisdiction and make all the laws for all the other states because they're doing that in an actual jurisdiction that has no jurisdiction. So Washington, D.C. was left out so that we can operate under the federal law, not state law. Just because the lawmakers are making laws in that, we can use the same jurisdiction for our trust as well. So why do we need a trust? Number one, to own nothing and control everything. Number two, asset protection. Number three, maximum privacy. Number four, we avoid the probate. Number five, avoid the double taxation. Listen to me, y'all. If you put your assets in the jurisdiction of California, then you're regulated by California. But guess who's over California? The federal government. So you got to adhere to California, and then you got to adhere to the federal government. That's being double taxed. That's being double regulated, okay? When you don't have to. You can avoid the frivolous lawsuits. You can optimize your taxable liability. You can still qualify for state benefits because, again, you should be taking less money in that SSN number and more money in that EIN number. The less money you take in that SSN number, the less they can tax you, okay? The more you take in that SSN number, the more they're going to tax you, right? So lawsuits are only good as basically your insurance policy. If you get sued, again, guess what? They're coming after the insurance, and then if that's not enough, they're coming after your personal assets. People say, well, I'm incorporated as a business. Yeah, guess what? It's called a limited liability company. That means there's still liability. The state is leaving a way out for them so that you can still be sued and basically can take your personal assets and your business assets as well, okay? So the type of trust that I'm about to show you has the ultimate asset protection. I don't care if it's a tax lien or judgments, or I don't care if it's a divorce decree or alimony, I don't care if it's some child support, or even the IRS themselves cannot touch this account. Did y'all hear me? The IRS themselves cannot touch this account. Why? Because they don't have the jurisdiction. Guess what? The IRS doesn't have jurisdiction over Washington, D.C. Did y'all know that? That's why every major business or building that operates in the world sits in Washington, D.C. United Nations sits in Washington, D.C. Social Security Administration sits in Washington, D.C. International Monetary Fund sits in Washington, D.C. Why are all these big things sitting in Washington, D.C.? Because they're not regulated. They don't have nobody over them. They're not being taxed. They're not being regulated by anybody. They're their own jurisdiction. So there's 3 places in the world, and I want you to write this down, 3 places in the world that have no jurisdiction, okay? And these are the 3 places that govern the world. Number 1, the Vatican. Rome, the Vatican, has its own jurisdiction. It does not adhere to the laws of Rome. When you go into the Vatican, you're in their own jurisdiction of the Vatican. It's not under the Roman law. They have their own laws. Number two, the city of London. If you ever been to London, there's a city of London inside London where the queen and the prince and the actual king reside. Buckingham Palace is in the city of London, which has no jurisdiction. Okay, listen to me, y'all. No jurisdiction at all. And then Washington, D.C. is the third one that has no jurisdiction. That means they're not governed by nobody. There's nobody on top of them that can tell them what to do. Not even the IRS, okay? So this trust, if you put it into the jurisdiction of Washington, D.C., you see the IRS doesn't even have jurisdiction over it, okay? Why? Because the U.S. court has jurisdiction over it, okay? And the U.S. court says this: we only try cases if you pay the actual court fees. Listen, if you go out right now and you hire a statutory attorney, a California attorney, they're gonna come after your assets so fast it won't even be funny, right? But guess what? Your California attorney can't come sue our trust because they're not licensed in Washington, D.C. That means that that means that one attorney in California can come up against your assets because they don't have the what, y'all? The jurisdiction. So that means they got to go hire counsel in Washington, D.C. to come up against your assets in California. That deters a lot of people from suing you. Now, this trust has been through legislation. Joseph Kennedy was the father of our dear president, John F. K. And Joseph Kennedy, man, if y'all don't know who this guy was, you need to go research who he was. Because he pushed through Congress the generation skipping tax, which means that basically this: if you make money in this generation, do you think your kids need to have to pay taxes for what you created in this generation? No. You created it in this generation. They benefiting from it, but they shouldn't have to pay taxes on it. So what he did was say, wait a minute, Congress, we're going to pass this because when we pass money to the next generation, they're not going to have to pay taxes on it. And it got passed, y'all, through Congress. Do y'all hear me? Then here comes Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney said, okay, wait a minute. 1976, we want to pass what we call the spendthrift clause. And when you see this, you're going to say, oh, my Lord. This allows your beneficiaries to use the assets in the trust without them being taxed. What do you mean? That means that is a trust fund baby. That means a trust fund baby can use your assets in the trust and they have no taxation at all. But they can use your house, they can use your cars, they can use everything that you have without incurring a taxable liability. And then Donald Trump brought in the actual blind trust. We'll talk about that here in a minute. Now, how are they bragging about this while we sit up here paying taxes? Billionaires are saying that they aren't paying no taxes, and they sitting up having the nerve to brag about it and put it on Yahoo Finance, right? And say, hey, this billionaire company made $11.2 billion and will pay no taxes. How is that even possible? Well, let me tell you how it's possible. Well, Amazon USA does not own those assets. They don't own the warehouses here. They don't own the forklifts. They don't own the 18-wheelers. They don't own none of that. Guess who owns it? Amazon's trust. And what Amazon Trust does, it leases the assets back to Amazon Corporation USA, in this case for $11.2 billion. So if you made $11.2 billion, but you have a lease for $11.2 billion, did you make any money? No. You zeroed out. Now, how do you create a lease for $11.2 billion? Well, there's something called a balance sheet. Has anybody ever heard of that? When you go put on your assets on the balance sheet, you can now figure out the balance or the actual value of those assets. In order to put a lease agreement in place, it has to be under the value of the balance sheet. Does that make sense? Okay? So now, that tells me Amazon probably has way more than $11.2 billion in assets. Right? If they can lease that back to the corporation, that corporation makes no money. And you can see all the Fortune 500 companies are doing it. So if you own a business, you can do the same exact thing on a smaller scale, right? And I'm gonna show you how to do that. So we legally reduce the tax liability, big time, okay? There is no capital gain tax. And I'm gonna say that again because everybody here buys and sells assets. You're gonna have to sell some assets in your lifetime. You're not gonna live your whole life without selling anything. At some point, you're gonna sell something, okay? But when you sell it out of that SSN number, guess what happens to you? You're getting double taxed. Every time you sell it from an SSN number, you're going to get double taxed. Let me say that again. Every time you sell something from an SSN number, you're going to get double taxed. So where should we sell our assets from? An irrevocable common law trust. And we're going to show you why we should sell it from a trust instead of you selling it personally. It's full transparency. Listen, we do a personal tax return, trust tax return, business tax return. Everything is full transparent. We're not hiding nothing from the IRS. We know what tax evasion is. We know it's intentional omission, improper deduction. We know all of that. But let me make sure that you understand what the IRS handbook says. That tax avoidance is not a criminal offense. It says it right there in the handbook. Any attempt to reduce, minimize, and alleviate taxes by legitimate means is permissible. They're telling you that there's another way. They're telling you right there, okay? Now, the history of this trust, you're not going to find it on a LegalZoom or any type of Google or anything, because this is a trust that comes out of Washington, D.C. They guarded it very heavily. It's been copyrighted 3 times. We just so happen to have our hands on the 2017 copyright. Now, this is a collaboration of tax attorneys, trust attorneys, CPAs, contract attorneys, you can name it, that have perfected this document over the last 12 years. This is the super trust, the ultimate asset protection. You can't get it anywhere else, okay? So what makes this very unique is that it's irrevocable, number 1. Number 2 is non-grantor. Number 3 is a complex type of trust. Number 4 is discretionary, and number 5 is spendthrift. But what people love about this trust is that you stay totally 100% control of it without having your Social Security number attached to it. Did y'all hear me? How can you be in control of something without not being attached to something? This is so powerful that the way this is set up is because you serve in 2 positions. You can serve as the compliance overseer, which is the protector of the trust. This is the only person that can add and remove trustees and beneficiaries. Then you also have the position as the trustee, which is the manager of the trust. This is the person that's actually in charge of the bank accounts. But let's make sure we understand who's in control here. The compliance officer is in control of the entire trust. They're the person that can hire and fire the trustee. Okay? So you can serve in both capacities, or you can serve just as the compliance officer and still stay in control of your trust. You don't lose control of it, right? You stay in control. Nobody else is in control but you, right? Now, we understand what actual fraudulent conveyance is. This is the only thing that can tear your trust down. If you move an asset into your trust without the permission to do so, then a lawyer can actually tear it down, okay? If you put a property into your trust and you don't have the permission to do it and your name is not on the deed, or if you put a property in the trust and there's 2 people's name on the deed and you only did it, you need to actually get the permission of the other person, that's fraudulent. They can go back 2, 4, sometimes even 6 to 10 years to see if it's fraudulent. Now, a spendthrift type of trust gives a big tax benefit. And a lot of people that set up a living revocable trust, they don't have the word spendthrift in it. What does the spendthrift clause allow you to do? Well, let me show you what the spendthrift clause allows you to do. Look what it says. Expenses to maintain trust assets that are used by beneficiaries and are paid directly from the trust bank account, here it is, y'all, are considered trust expenses and not taxable to the beneficiary. That is huge. Let me give you an example of that. So if you were to actually, your beneficiary come up to you and say, hey, Dad, I need a car. How much is the car? $32,000. So if you take the money out the trust and give him $32,000, that's taxable to him. Then he goes buy the car. So you just put them in a position where they're going to get taxed with the asset. Instead of doing that, all you have to do is say, you know what, how much is the car? $32,000? Here, take the checkbook of the trust. Go buy the car with the trust account. Now who owns the asset, y'all? The trust owns it. Who's expensing the asset now, y'all? The trust is. But guess what? What does it say right there? The beneficiary is allowed to drive it as needed without no liability, without no taxation. This is how you operate. And we've been actually used to be so independent that we want everybody, we don't want nobody in our business. What the wealthy do is operate as a family unit. If there's $100,000 in the trust and $20,000 is allocated to me, guess what? The trustee knows that, hey, I got $20,000 allocated to me. Whatever I need, I just have the trust go buy it. And I still get to use it without having a tax liability associated with it. So again, here is a situation where a company made $1.2 billion. How many business owners do we have in here? You're a business owner, raise your hand. Got 1, 2, no business owners? Okay, look, this is for you. This company made $1.2 billion until they met us, okay? And what happened was they're about to drop $444,000 in taxes, 37%. So what happened was now is instead of doing that, we said, wait a minute, before you do that, let's sell your assets to the trust. Let's look at all these assets that you got. So let's sell them to the trust. What does that do? Number one, you just protected all your assets that the business owns. Number two, you just protected yourself again because nobody can sue you because you don't have nothing in the business now. Number three, here it is. Your trust now can lease the assets back to your business. In this case, they leased the assets back for $1 million, which tells me they had well over $1 million in assets. And you can see now their taxable liability or net income now is $200,000 versus $1.2 million. And now they only pay taxes on 20% of $200,000 and only pay taxes of $40,000 versus $444,000. I think that's a major difference. I think that's a big time difference. Okay? This is just an example of how this trust works and how you can take advantage of it, right? And here's where I wanted to get to. How many people in here got kids? How many people gonna name their kids the beneficiaries? Oh, you are? Okay, well, let me explain this to you. If you have a spendthrift trust, then you can take full advantage of it with the tax savings. And you can't do this with nothing else, so don't even try it because you're gonna get in trouble. It has to say spendthrift. You don't have a common law, irrevocable spendthrift trust, then you can't operate with this. But if you got a spendthrift trust, look at this, y'all. Medical expenses. Can you write off all your medical expenses on your personal taxes? Can you? Can you? No. You cannot. But guess what the trust can do? 100% tax deduction on anybody you name as a beneficiary. Again, that's why, again, kids with special needs can be taken care of 100% through this type of trust because all their medical is paid 100%. Contribution. How much money can you get to the church without starting to get the credit for? Well, you can only give up to a certain amount. And that's it. You don't get no more credit after that. But guess what the trust can do? There it is, 100%. Okay? You see why we need to get from a trust versus your SSN number? Okay? How many kids go to college in the Adventist system? Lord have mercy. And we just passing this up? We get to write off the room and board. How do you think they sending their kids to Harvard and Yale? Well, the trust gets to write off the room and board. This is my favorite one too, John, right here. Wellness. We are vegetarians. Can you write your vegetarian diet off on your personal taxes? Well, let me answer that for you. No, you can't. Okay? Until now, this is my real favorite one, though. They could have said museum, but they say travel to a museum. And that's interesting. What do you mean travel to a museum? That means that we can travel to, so as long as you take your beneficiaries, you can take a trip to Spain and write the entire trip off as long as you go to a what, y'all? A museum. Where was this information at? Where we needed it, right? Look, interest on credit cards, telephone bill, life insurance premiums. Let's talk about that. Can you write your life insurance premiums off on your personal taxes? No. Man, a trust get the right to 100%. Y'all, this is night and day. This is why they are ahead and we not. This is what's happening to us. And then look at this one, y'all. Home expenses. Now, I want you to, who has kids that are going to be beneficiaries? If your kids live at home with you, my daughter's 17, she live in a house. Y'all, I'd be afraid to even say this, but I could write the whole house off. I write the mortgage off, the electric bill, the water bill, the internet, the gas, the lawn, the pool, everything, because a beneficiary lives in the house under a spendthrift, irrevocable common law trust. Write the entire expenses off. She's 17 years old and she's starting to drive. Lord have mercy. Y'all pray for me. But guess what? If she wrecks out, can you write that off your personal taxes? You cannot. His trust can write off the maintenance and the repairs if she wrecked that car. Postage. All right? Y'all get this. Do y'all get this? This is, like I said, do y'all think they wanted y'all to know this? No. Because they want you to actually be taxed. So again, now that we said, well, how do beneficiaries benefit? The question is, how do you benefit? Right? The way you're going to benefit is that you can't take your assets with you to the grave. Last time I checked. You ain't going to have no U-Haul. You ain't going to have no storage unit. So why are we trying to hold on to our assets till death when we don't even own them? Okay? What we need to do now is sell them to the trust in your lifetime right now. Right? So think about it. All women, all the hats, purses, shoes, wardrobe, selling all that to the trust, right? Appliances, home furniture, china, couches, lamps, pictures, everything. Because you can't take it with you. So you need to sell it now at fair market value. We're not overstating it. What you would sell it for right now. And that creates a bill of sale. Now, the reason why I want to get to this is how many books does Ellen G. White have? Peter, Pastor, how many books you think? Just give me a ballpark. 100 and what? Now, let me ask you a question. Who owns the intellectual property of Ellen G. White? Did y'all hear that? It's held in trust. Did y'all hear that? Intellectual property is valuable. If you got a website, oh my goodness, you don't even understand. You can sell that intellectual property to your trust. If you got a copyright on anything you copyrighted, you can sell it. If you trademark your logo, my goodness, you can sell that. Right? The presentation. I'm selling that to the trust. I don't own it. Right? This is the value of what you can do. So now you can create value out of your own self that you didn't even know you had. See? So watch this. The trust can now bring in money through leases. We talked about leases. If you own your own business, you need to be leasing the assets back. Right? But if you have a rental property or rental properties, if you're not operating with an irrevocable common law trust, it's taxable to the trust. But I'm telling you right here, it says right here, rental leases income paid directly to the trust, it's not taxable to the trust because it's under common law irrevocable under the Supreme Court that's made the ruling under Washington, D.C. that says their actual rulings, no taxation on individuals. That's their ruling. Statutory has a different ruling. They tax on assets, not the Supreme Court. So you can have a capital gain. Listen to me, y'all. Do not sell no property or anything out of your Social Security number. You got to sell it from the trust. Because if you sell it from the trust, there is zero capital gain. Okay? So how much is the federal capital gain? Let's talk about that real quick. If you make more than $52,000 in a capital gain, how much you paying? 20%. Did y'all hear me? So if you sell anything and make a profit over $52,000, you're paying 20%. That's to the federal. Then California got an actual capital gains tax. So you have to pay that too. That's double taxation. All we're trying to tell you is that the government recognizes that the state has its own taxation laws, and because the government recognizes that, they put us in a position where we're not double taxed. Yeah, you got to pay the state, but now they're saying you don't have to pay the federal. That's huge. Because of why, y'all? Common law, irrevocable trust. That's why, okay? Now, you think I'm talking out the side of my neck? No, I'm not. I operate under a tax code because I deal with IRS agents that make me operate under a tax code. We operate under tax code, basically Title 26 of Subchapter A of Chapter 1 of Subchapter actually J of Part A of 643B. What does it say, y'all? Capital gains and losses, gains from a sale or an exchange of capital assets shall be included. What does it say, y'all? Excluded. This is the IRS talking to you, not me. This is what they said. But it only has the provision if it's a common law irrevocable trust. It's excluded. I don't care what asset you sell. So anybody that got stocks and bonds in their name, you're messing up. You got that 401k in your name, you're messing up. Because you're going to get taxed on it. But the trust own the stocks and bonds. Ain't no capital gain. That's huge, y'all. And if this carries into your next generation, you have solved the problem for your next generation already. I don't care if it's crypto. I don't care if it's Bitcoin. I don't care if it's real estate. I don't care if you're buying another business. I don't care if it's whatever it is. If the trust engages it with the irrevocable common law trust, it is zero capital gain. So all we do is basically show you how to get your money out the trust by creating a promissory demand note against it, right? So last time I checked, you don't even realize that you can sell your assets that the state even owns. I'm about to tell you something. See, you didn't realize that your driver's license in your name is worth $50,000. Nobody told you that. Social Security number is worth another $50,000. Nobody told you that. Your birth certificate worth $75,000. Nobody told you that. College, credit, all are worth money. So when we do your asset sheet, well, you come out worth a lot more money than you think you are because you didn't know that you had value that the state was holding against you. Guess what we're doing with that driver's license now? Taking that driver's license out of the actual jurisdiction of California, and I'm putting it into the common law jurisdiction of Washington, D.C. I'm doing the same thing with the Social Security card. I'm doing the same thing with the birth certificate. Everything I own is in my social, because I am the beneficiary, I have the right to move it into the jurisdiction I want. And that's what you have the right to do. So that now you cannot be double regulated, you cannot be double taxed. You now put yourself and your family in a position where they're doing the same exact thing. But if you leave them, and when you're gone, the statutory knows you're gone. You can't do nothing about it. Your family got to deal with it now. And most of the time, they're not going to deal with it. I got a lady right now that her father has $56,000 left in the checking account, right? She got to go take off time to go hire an attorney and basically go claim that money. The attorney want to charge us $7,200. Now, this young lady at 24 years old, do you think she got $7,200 to go after $56,000? No. So what's going to happen? The state going to get it. And that's what happens to a lot of us because you're not aware of it after you're gone. The state going to get it because we as young people don't have the time to go take our work to go to probate. We ain't got time we only have the money to afford the attorney. How are we going to fight for your assets? It's your job to leave the assets in a way that our family can benefit from them without having to go through these processes, right? So again, people say, I got a trust. I heard people say, I have a trust today. Listen to me. If you hadn't transferred your assets into the trust, then you don't have no trust. If they didn't show you how to put your cash into the trust, you don't got no trust. You don't put your income into the trust, you ain't got no trust. You ain't put your businesses or your properties, your insurance, because when a discovery attorney comes, They coming for everything in that Social Security number name. When I'm coming to sue you, this is what they're looking at. This is what the discovery attorney is looking at. And what makes it so dangerous? You done gave money to this church in your Social Security number. If I'm a discovery attorney, I can go right to pastor and ask him for the record because it's a public record. And I see you done gave the church $30,000. Guess what? I'm going to assume that you got $300,000 somewhere because tithing is based off 10%. You see how they can use that against you because it's registered. So you should be using a vehicle that's not registered to give to your charitable of choice. Now you are not tracked. You're private. As a private citizen, your personal assets need to be out your name. Your vehicles need to be out your name. These are all the 9 pillars that you need to remove out of your name. And when you do this, you are now operating as a good steward, okay? And now you're prepared to leave it for the next generation. All a trust is a place that protects assets, okay? And here's what I want you to understand. Under common law, everybody thinks probably that you have to go to an attorney to set up a trust. That is the biggest myth. When the Supreme Court says that a trustee can be a bank, an attorney, don't miss it, y'all, or a person. Wait a minute. The Supreme Court just put you on the same level as a bank? They just put you on the same level as an attorney? And all you got to have is blood pumping through your veins? That's it, y'all. That's the only requirement to be a trustee. That's under common law. Okay? Well, let the attorney here tell you that. He ain't going to tell you that. He ain't going to tell you you on the same level as him. He ain't going to tell you that. He's going to make sure that he's always above you and you always beneath him. Well, why didn't the Supreme Court make that ruling? Why the Supreme Court said that's not the case? We are the same plateau here, right? So we can move all types of assets into the trust. Current, fixed, physical, tangible, intangible, operating, convertible, 401ks. But you got to take the money out of your social, move it into the trust, and let the trust do the investments. Because at that point in time, there's no capital gain. You keep doing things in that SSN number, you're paying, that's the highest taxation on the planet. There's no higher taxation than the SSN number. Did y'all know that? In the world. You're paying the highest taxes in the world. So if you didn't get nothing else I said today, you understand that jurisdiction is the most important thing. Before they try a court of law, what do they always have to pick first, y'all? What always has to come first? The jurisdiction. Because they have to make sure that they have the right to even try the case. Okay? So jurisdiction is going to determine protection. You got the wrong jurisdiction, you ain't going to have the right protection. Okay? You got the right jurisdiction, you're going to get the right protection because you got the protection of the Supreme Court. That's in charge of the entire country. Then if you got the protection of the Supreme Court, you got the actual protection of taxation because their advanced ruling says that we don't tax individuals. And then we got the privacy of the Supreme Court. Okay? That's why we as citizens can operate through a common law irrevocable trust through Washington, D.C. So all this trust is a domestic. It's inside the United States of America. It's specialized according to your particular situation. It's non-grantor. That means your Social Security number is not used. Okay? And a lot of people, we have to make sure we understand that here in a minute. It's complex. That means you can accumulate money in the trust or you can distribute it out. It's up to you because you have full discretionary. That means you ain't got to report to nobody. You don't have to report to nobody. A revocable living trust has to report to its beneficiaries. This one, you don't have to report to nobody. Okay? Spendthrift. We can pay for the actual expenses of beneficiaries through the trust without them incurring a taxable liability. Dynasty, the money you create in this particular generation can feed into the next generation without them incurring a taxable liability. And blind, we can actually loan or lease our assets from the business trust back to the actual business for a full 100% tax deduction on the blind part. There's no restrictions. You get a checkbook, you get a savings account. You want a debit card, you got that too. You want a checkbook, you got that too. It has its own EIN number with its own bank account. If you use it correctly, it's lawsuit proof. Why? Because under the jurisdiction of Washington, D.C., you're not doing any business in this trust in this jurisdiction. Therefore, they cannot sue this trust. Now, if you ever try to sue a trust, good luck, because you can't sue a P.O. box in the name. You got to serve somebody to sue somebody. And guess what they can do? They can find you at work. They can find you at church. They can find you at home. They can find you at the gym and serve you. But how are you going to serve a trust when all it is a name in a P.O. box? Good luck trying to serve that, right? So you get lawsuit proof, registered. It's only registered with the federal government. Do you know that California would not even know about your trust? They have no idea. The county, the city, the state don't know nothing unless you give them the jurisdiction. This is a federal instrument. It's not a state instrument. So they want you to do a living revocable trust. Why? So that they get the jurisdiction. But you don't have to give them the jurisdiction. It's registered with the federal government. Last time I checked, federal government is in Washington, D.C. Okay? Again, taxes. You only have to file a 1041 tax return if you sell an asset. If you don't sell an asset, then you don't even have to file a tax return. The only time a tax return is filed is when you sell an asset. But guess what? When you sell the asset and file a tax return, there's no taxes due. Ain't that something? Still no taxes due. Well, that's even more beautiful. Again, total asset protection. You, the trustee, can sell your assets to the trust, creating a promissory demand note against the trust, giving you a use of tax-free income up to the amount of bill of sale. Again, this trust is going to go to the next generation, the next generation. So we have 7 components in our estate. Now, there's 4 purposes in life. Business, you either going to work for yourself or work for somebody. Family, you're getting up every day in the morning to leave something to your loved ones. Investments, you cannot do this off the back of your own money. You're going to have to use other people's money to get the generational wealth. And charitable, let's not get it twisted, y'all. We are made to give. You got to put yourself in position, not only yourself, your family in position to be able to give. And this is why we're pushing this. This is why I'm here. The church members need to have trust to give back to the church. Listen to me, y'all. The church is going down. That means because you went to church, that doesn't mean your kids going to go to church. But guess what? The church can still get its actual protection. It can still get its money. Because if you make the church the beneficiary of your trust, whether your kids go to church or not, the trust is still going to benefit the church. So you're speaking from the grave. You're still paying tithe from the grave. Lord have mercy, right? Because you set it up correctly. So we say, you know what? People say, well, do I need the entire estate? Yes, you do. Because you're not knowing in the future who's going to be the next big business owner. Come on. You don't know who in the future is going to be the next big investor. Come on. Right? So we use 4 distinct trusts. 4. We have a family trust. Why do we use a family trust? To protect family assets. Those are family assets only. Okay? But if you operate a business, should you be putting your business assets with your family assets? No. They got to be separated because business assets are being used for businesses. My family assets are for my family. Now, in order for me to actually still control and run things and still build generational wealth 200 years in the grave, I use an investment trust because I've already given explicit direction to my successors. I got 10 annuities in there. I got a 5-year, a 10-year, a 20-year, and a 30-year. And when those annuities mature, the successor knows to go get more annuities. So it's going to keep creating generational wealth. And who owns the annuity? Not me, not the successor, not my kids. The trust own it. So there's no taxation to my kids. But all that money is being generated in that investment trust. And guess who the beneficiaries are? My kids. See? We have to learn how to operate. We use a private foundation, y'all. Again, because you can now be discovered on how much money you give to the church. Through that Social Security number. There it is again. So we don't give money to the church through our Social Security number no more. I tithe and offering coming from my trust, private foundation. Okay, so now guess what, Uncle Sam? It don't matter. You can't discover me on how much money I gave to the church because I didn't give it. The trust gave it. Remember, you don't own the trust, right? You're just the manager of it, right? So now you can see that you are totally 100% protected. Now listen, y'all, this is the tax rate. And I want to show you that they're actually purposely taking out the middle class, purposely. If you work at McDonald's and you make $42,000 a year to $80,000, you thought you got a raise, the tax rate goes from 12% to 22%. Did y'all see that? Look, 10% to 12%. They trying to play fair. How in the world do you justify going 12% to 22% on people that only make $40,000? How do you justify that? It can't be justified. Okay? Listen, you got a $2,500 mortgage. That's $30,000 a year right there that you got to take. Then you got another car note and insurance. By the time you didn't reach $1,000 on your car note, you had $42,000 a year that you got to take just to maintain your house for your family and the car your family got to drive in. You're forced to take $42,000 in that Social Security number name. And then guess what Uncle Sam says? What? You took $42,000? Give me my 22%. You see how you're being taxed inadvertently for having to pay for assets that you already maintain and owning. And now Uncle Sam always say, you had to pay for that? Well, let me tax you on that. Okay? And that's what's happening to us. We're being taxed inadvertently. You see, he pays fair again, and then he goes up from 24% to 32%. He's taking out the upper middle class now. See? Doctors, lawyers, dentists, they now getting hit at the highest tax rate. So who's supporting the country here? The lower middle class and the upper middle class. That's it. The rest of the people ain't supporting it. Okay? Now, I want to make sure you all see this, that you make over, $500,000 a year, you're paying 37% taxes. Highway robbery. Now, if you didn't take out self-employment tax, that's another 15.2%. When did they send out the memo that the IRS make more money on your business than you do? Because if you make $1 million, that's 37% plus the 15.3%, that's 52%. And then you in California, Lord have mercy. That's another 8%. So you're telling me if I make $1 million in California, Lord have mercy, I'm getting 60% of my money took? It's happening to everybody, y'all. Okay? Clients in Georgia, same way. They getting 60% of their money taken from the state and the federal. Does everybody understand this? What's happening? You don't stop it now, your next generation gets worse. If you don't stop the bleeding right now, it's going to get worse. Okay? So we as the stewards, we as the ones that understand this, we're the one that got the information, we have to do something about it. So I want to show you that basically how you move money into your trust. There's something called principal and there's something called income. If you move money into your trust from a W-2 check, that's principal. It's already been taxed. Does everybody understand that? So principal is money that's already been taxed. And if you move money into the trust that's already been taxed, do you have to file a tax return for that? No. It's already been taxed. You cannot be double taxing the trust. So if you're making a good W-2 check and you dumping as much money as you can into that trust, there's no taxation for that trust. You don't have to file no taxes for that trust. That money's sitting in your trust as your major savings account that cannot be touched by anybody because it's not attached to your social. It's the biggest savings account. But if you move money into the trust during the tax year, that's income. If you have a 1099 and you're moving money in the trust during that year, that's income to the trust. Now it has to actually expense those incomes. Okay? So you got to know the difference between principal and income. And if you're going to be their trustee, we're going to make sure that we train you. See, that's another thing. If you engage in our trust, you get the training. We're going to show you how basically to identify revenue, whether it's principal, whether it's income, whether it's capital gain, gift tax, dividend, qualified dividend, even a promissory note. Look what it says on capital gain. it is not income to an irrevocable trust. But it's taxed at 20% to a revocable trust. If you got a living trust, revocable, there's no tax benefit. Okay? Your actual assets are still on your 1040 tax return. So my attorney's going to eat you up. All they go at, Your Honor, can I pull the tax return? And if them assets that you're saying is not yours is still on your actual 1040 tax return, you lost. Okay? Because I'm going to get you, right? But if you have your assets on a 1041, a separate tax return, now you can claim those are not your assets, right? So this is how this works. So S Corp, again, we're using S Corp at the top for your business. If you have your own business, if you work your own business, you need to be an S Corp. Why? Because you get maximum savings for that. We're going to show you how to operate through that, but again, the S Corp is the way to go. We use a model called the 60-25-15. That model basically allows you to actually always have the money to pay the tax liability for your business. That 60% represents your expenses, okay? That 25% represents your reasonable salary that you're going to take home. People always ask me, how do I pay myself out my business? Well, you set this up, 60-25-15. 25% of the money that you make, if you made $1,000 this week, $250 go to your personal checking account. That's paying yourself first. And then 15% goes into your business savings account. That's paying yourself second. Because we're going to use that 15% to pay the tax liability. Did y'all hear me? So at the end of the year, guess what? If you operating in 60-25-15, and I'm going to show it to you. Because y'all going to make $1 million, whoever operating a business here. You're going to make $1 million. You already made $1 million. But when you make the $1 million, the reason why it's been hard because your subconscious is fighting you. You know on the front of it that you want to make $1 million, but your subconscious know on the back of it, if you make $1 million, you're in trouble because we don't have our stuff together. So you're fighting, your subconscious is fighting your conscious. Watch this. When you operate this, you clear it up because now we're on the same page. When we make $1 million, we know that on the $250,000 that we took home as a salary, it's a $58,000 tax liability. Your state tax liability, we included that too. It's going to be $20,000. Now, what makes an S Corp different from a regular company is that the actual $150,000 in savings is not taxed as income. It's taxed as a distribution, which is a lot smaller. So now you're only paying $22,000 on a distribution of $150,000. The total tax liability with the state is $100,000. Now, how much was the tax liability on the other chart there? I think I showed you with 37%, right? You're paying 10% in California, operating as a 60-25-15. Listen, y'all, they will not teach you this, okay? Somebody in California only pay 10% tax liability. Unheard of, right? The difference between the capital holding company and the actual S Corp is that the capital holding company is used for purchases. So now when you bring money through the capital holding company, and by the way, the capital holding company takes multiple revenue streams, right? So you as a business owner, you should only be taking one revenue stream, right? Everything else that you create with your girlfriends, with your partners, 1099s here, network marketing here, should be going through your capital holding company where you're not claiming the ownership. The capital holding company claims the ownership. And now when that multiple revenue streams start coming through the capital holding company, we use this in a 60-10-30. The 60% is made to actually purchase the assets. And this is how you purchase assets. Now, people ask me, do I purchase assets in my Social Security number? No. Because if it's in your Social Security number, they're going to tax you at the highest rate. Where do we purchase assets? Through our capital holding company. I don't care if it's property, I don't care if it's equipment, I don't care if it's vehicles. You purchase it through the capital holding company EIN number. Now you don't have to maintain an asset in your what? Social Security number, right? So this is where you purchase at. And after you purchase the asset, guess what we do? We write it off first. So we use accelerated depreciation, my IRS agents. So if a property is under 1.8 million, we can write it off the first year. Vehicles under 75,000, we can write it off the first year. Okay? We ain't waiting no depreciation schedule. We're going to write it off the first year. Why? Because the next year, we're moving the asset into our trust of choice. So if we bought a business asset, then we're going to move it into the business trust. If we bought a family asset, then we're going to move it into the family trust. Got it? We bought an investment asset, we move it into the investment trust. Right? Your capital holding company is going to do $1 million too. Okay? And when it does, it's used in this model. 600,000 or 60% of the money is going to be used for purchases. This is how we start accumulating assets into our trust. Okay? By just a state strategy. 10% is the tax liability, and 30% is, again, money that's saved after taxes. After. That means that I can inject $300,000 into my trust of choice without having to file a tax return. Does that make sense to everybody? Because it's been taxed. It's already been taxed. So you use 60% for your purchases, 10% is the tax liability, and 30% is going to be used to actually inject into your trust. We use a business trust to actually hold public used assets. If you have rental properties, then you need a business trust. Okay? You need to hold them in your business trust. We can convey all the assets in your business trust. We can sell them. It creates a promissory demand note against them. We lease property back to the business. We lease equipment back to the business. Okay? And we always donate to the private foundation. Family trust, it holds private used assets. Listen to me, all your family members are not going to be able to have a trust. But you can put your family members' assets into your family trust. My uncle has 4 Harley-Davidson motorcycles, no kids. Uncle, what you going to do with them Harley-Davidsons if something happened to you? I don't know. Well, you want the probate to take them? No. Well, then put them in my trust and let me protect them. Okay? You still get to ride them. I don't own them. You're the beneficiary of them. But they protect it in case something happens. That's $100,000 worth of value you got there. Why are we just going to give it to the probate? No. So you can have a family trust to hold family assets. All your family members ain't going to have no trust. You got to have that conversation with them. Look, this is bigger than you. This is about our legacy. It's about protecting everything we worked hard for, right? You can hold it in the family trust, okay? And then again, it can donate to the actual private fund. Now, we use the investment trust to hold all your investments, y'all. You should not have one investment in your Social Security number. If you do, take it out right now, okay? If you got 401ks, take it out. Put that money into the investment trust. Let the trust go into an investment, not you. Because, again, you're not taxed on it. And, again, that money can build the generational wealth for the next 200 years right there. And then the private foundation, y'all, listen. You need this if you want to give away to the community. Let's not get it twisted. Everybody in the community is going to ask you for something, including the church. You need to be in position to be able to give it to them, right? So we maintain all private use assets with the actual private foundation that's used for the actual community. This is where you give education scholarships or grants away. You can do philanthropy, right? All of this, right? Now, how you make a contribution? Did you know that basically in 2020 that you could have donated? Who has a W-2 check in here? Let me see all the W-2s. W-2. Did you know that in 2020 you could have gave 100% of your W-2 to your own private foundation and got a 100% tax deduction and got a refund back, and then the money that you put into your private foundation still been in your possession? You still would have had it. They changed it in 2022 to 60%. Y'all, it's still at 60%. Listen to me. The only requirement a private foundation has to do is give 5% of its money to another 501c3 charity. That's it. What do we do with the other 95%? Oh, it goes to the family. Let me show you. See, right now, you made $200,000 on your actual W-2. Standard deduction for everybody is $25,900. That means you actually are left with a taxable liability of $174,100. And guess what? You only took out 20% or 10% of your check. If you claim 0 on your W-4, you're only taking out 10%. So you see they only took out 10% on this check, which is $20,000, but the tax liability is $33,551. You still owe money at the end of the year. Watch this. We bring in the private foundation now, whoop de whoop. $200,000 made. Now we give $120,000 to our own private foundation that we don't have to file a tax return on. Oh my goodness, right? That we still get the tax deduction on. That brought your income down to $80,000. You're taxed at 22% on $80,000 because you took out, again, 10%. You actually had taken out more than you needed because now you're getting a refund back. Not only are you getting a refund back, but you still got $120,000 in your private foundation. Do y'all see the difference? That you got to give 5% of that money to a charity. Well, if you go to church and you're paying tithe and offering, that comes from the private foundation. Does everybody get this? You're protected now. You lowered your tax liability, and you're getting a refund back. And you still got money in your possession from your actual W-2. So we use a special type of actual 501 or actual tax-exempt organization. It's called a 508C ministry trust. Have you ever heard of that? Anybody ever heard of that? I know everybody heard of 501c3, right? Your homework tonight is to go look up a 508c. Go look it up. Now, if you ask my opinion, this is how we're supposed to be structured. Do y'all know that 501c3 limits your speech? Do you know there's only certain things I can say from this pulpit? Or the government will shut us down? Can I talk about politics? In this church, can I talk about politics? No, I can't. Because if I do, the government can shut me down right now because you're operating as a 501c3, which is owned by the public. And they restrict your speech. Matter of fact, they can shut the church down right now because there's a lot of YouTube videos, Lord have mercy, on Adventist pastors speaking from the pulpit about politics. That is against the law. But when you operate a 508c ministry trust, there is no speech impediment. You can speak how you want to speak. There's no tax return. Do you know a 501c3 got to file a tax return? You know, every time y'all give money, this is public record. I can go look at what you gave. That's scary. You let your trust give the money, now they can't look you up. Listen, 508c is a ministry trust. Why does Kim Kardashian and her mother got a church? You think they religious? No. They got a church because they're getting a tax deduction. See, we didn't know this stuff. And nobody taught us this stuff. So everybody in here that has a W-2 check needs a 508c. Because you can donate to your own 508c. There's no tax return for the 508c. This country was started on two things. That's why we're going back to common law. Two things, two principles. Free from religious order. Okay? We wanted to be free from Catholic. That's why we came over here. Number two, free from taxation. The ministry trust is the only trust that can do that. It does not have to file a tax return. And it's free from actual, again, your religious order. You can worship whoever you want to worship. And again, basically, there's no taxation to it. All right? So we're going to show you now. Basically, this is where we're going to stop. So we operate with those four trusts. Right? I want everybody to kind of see. So on the bottom of the dotted line, y'all, is the private sector. This is where you're private. You're operating the privacy. Above the dotted line is the public sector. This is where you operate in the public. Okay? So you see that we have vehicles for the public and we got vehicles for the private. Okay? But the main thing here is to not commingle them. You have to keep them separated. Okay? When you commingle them, this is where you get in problems with the IRS. Right? Because remember, the trust that we have, the jurisdiction they don't even have the jurisdiction. So when you start putting stuff they have jurisdiction of into stuff they don't have jurisdiction over, then now you got a problem. Okay? So that's why we keep it separate. S Corp is used for your reasonable salary for your company. The capital holding company is used for your multiple revenue streams that you create. How many people in here are going to create multiple revenue streams? Me. How many people in here got multiple revenue streams? You got multiple. You got money coming over here. You got money coming from here. You got money coming from here. Okay? If you got multiple revenue streams, then you need to consider a capital holding company. Okay? So that you're not putting all the taxation on top of your social. Everybody got that? Understand? All right, I'm going to bring John back up. Right? And we're going to discuss basically how to get involved. But that's pretty much it. John, come on up. And we're going to discuss basically the estate here and how you guys can get involved.
We're going to take some questions at this time. There's a lot of information here, a lot of very powerful. Thank you, Russell, for that presentation. A lot of information. Let's give him a big round of applause. Now, part of this information is comforting, and part of it may make you feel slightly uncomfortable because you're thinking about, how in the world am I going to pull this off? How in the world can I do this? How many of you raise your hand? I'm going to do a poll here. How many raise your hand if you have a living trust right now with at least a will? Raise your hand really nice and high. I'm trying to make a audience, okay? All right. At least 3 of you, 4 of you at least have a living trust at this current time. And you may be interested in how best that can be done, or how best what can you do with that as compared to this? Some of you may be wondering that question. Anybody wondering that question, by the way? You may or may not be wondering that question. I don't know. So I'm asking you the question, what do you have questions about currently right now? Those of you who have, how many of you have a will? You don't have a living trust, but you have a will. Raise your hand if you have a will. Okay? How many of you don't have anything right now and you're wondering what to do with your estate? Raise your hand. Okay? All right. Very good. Very good. All right. Now, let me ask you this question. How many of you would like to do something to be able to prepare your family's estate? How many would like to do something other than what you've been doing? Okay, good. All right. So in this particular point, we have about 5 options that people can obtain this particular trust. But before we go to the 5 options, let me ask if there are any questions about anything that you've seen so far. We need to go back to a slide or anything like that to engage you. Do we have a roving mic at all to hear? Okay, there you go. Alex, go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, my question is, when you purchase a property, right, you actually have a debt.
Russell?
You don't own it outright. And so if you're going to put it in the trust, how could you do that when you still you still have a loan and it has under a social security number and there's still a substantial debt? How is that done?
For a mortgage?
Exactly.
Okay. A mortgage, since you are still paying a mortgage on a house, you cannot sell it to the trust, but what you can do is you can convey it to the trust. And a conveyance is a giving it to the trust, all right? You give it to the trust, and you are still doing like you've been doing. Instead of paying the mortgage directly yourself, you then give your own money to the trust and let the trust pay it at that point in time. You do a quick deed, is that right? The quick deed to the quick claim to the trust. No guarantees on that. You're just going to, give it to it because you're still paying a mortgage on it. And so now the trust is going to control that aspect of it. And then now you can get the benefits of the taxation, savings, and all that other stuff that we're talking about in the family trust. Does that make sense?
So you can just quit claim it, right?
Right.
And then in order to pay also whatever your income or whatever, you put it in a I guess you need to open a trust, a bank account,
Right.
trust account, and then pay.
Right.
Through that? Okay.
We'll go through that with you and show you how you can once you get the estate set up, then you're legal, you can legally do that at that point in time. And also what he mentioned about the benefits, the home write-off, the insurance write-off, the taxations, the HOA write-offs as well. Some of y'all paying high HOA fees as well. All those are write-off. Some of you have lawn service that's coming to your home. That's a write-off. Some of you have remodeling, repairs done to your property. That's a write-off. Some of you have a pool cleaning person that come to your house. That's a write-off. So many of the things that you are not aware of that you can write off in an irrevocable common law trust that you cannot do on your own as a person or you cannot do as a business without a trust like that.
So then, during the tax, when you're doing your taxes, you can put that as write-offs.
Yes. Yes, inside the irrevocable trust, yes. And also remember the wellness plan. That means your groceries, your diet, your fitness, your insurances, all those are taxable tax write-offs inside your family trust. Your travel write-offs to your travel inside your family trust. Make sense?
There's two ways to do that. There's
Hands over there. Go ahead. While you're addressing that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, when you have a property that has a mortgage on it, the only thing you can do is a quit claim deed, because a quit claim deed moves the property into the trust without warranty.
Right.
Not saying that there's no lien holders against it, but when you pay the property off, you can move it to the trust and sell it, but now you move it with a general warranty deed, because now there's no liability, there's no lien holders. Got it? Now, if you do a general liability with a mortgage, they're gonna call the no due. See? That's why you gotta use a quit claim deed, because you're not claiming any warranty on the property. So that's the difference. So properties that have notes, we convey. Properties that are paid in full, we sell. Okay? That's the difference.
All right. Your question right there? You had a question right there? Okay, go ahead and speak inside the mic there.
If the investment trust is set up,
Uh-huh.
who will be managing in that?
Okay, you have two choices. In the trust, you have two of the most powerful positions in a trust. You have the compliance overseer and you have the trustee. Many of us, when we set up our trust, we have a choice too. I can continue to be the trustee of my trust, or I can resign from that position as a trustee and let a management firm or an accounting firm be my trustee, because it's a manager. It's managing the trust. And as a compliance overseer, my name is not literally on record with the public, but as a compliance officer, I control the entire trust. Okay? So therefore, they will keep up with the profit and loss statements, they will keep up with the monthly management, and they will file the tax returns, whatever is necessary at the end of the year with their IRS engaged agents. The 1040 and the 1041s will be also filed in behalf of the trust and in behalf of my personal side of trust as taxes as well. Does that make sense?
Yes. What would be the cost to set up this trust?
Okay. Wow. See, I was going to save that question to the end. All right. So let's look at the options here. There are approximately 5 options that you have with this trust. However, we are going to, we have different plans for different families. We have a plan right now for a person who does not have a 720 credit score. The person has less than a 720 credit score. We actually, in our plan, we actually have a credit repair program and a 2020 vision plan to help a person who is trying to get set up in business and also is also trying to get funding to be able to obtain their trust. And so what we have people who have gotten, say, even incarcerated, that's gotten out, and in 90 days, we're able to help them advance all the way to a 720 credit score and be able to take that 720 credit score. Then we have an investor that injects $10,000. We have lenders that can invest $10,000 in that person to get their business vision plan, get their credit on their business side. They're Dun & Bradstreet. that helps them to get trade lines, business lines, those kind of things, installments, and be able to go after $150,000 worth of credit card, business credit cards, where they don't have to pay interest on those business credit cards for up to 6 to 18 months. And then we can go after $150,000 in funding for them as well for their new business, okay? We literally set them up for a business with a business plan through our 2020 business plan. Many of those of you who are talking about, oh, I would love to have a business of my own business, we set you up. One of our first businesses that we set you up with is a consulting firm of where you can actually be able to have a business and be able to have the funding for that business. And guess what? Under the capital holding company, you could use the money for other businesses that you have and creativity that you have. Some of you want to have an idea of a trucking company, a nail salon, a laundromat, and some other stuff under you. You wouldn't put all that revenue under a W-2. If you're ever working for somebody, you have a W-2 income already, you wouldn't have your side S-Corp business on top of that revenue that you're paying 37% taxes on. That wouldn't make any sense. You put that through your capital holding company, and you have to let the capital holding company then can go and buy 60% assets through that capital holding company. Does that make sense? And so therefore, now you save yourself on taxable income, and then you can move the other 30% of that into your trust as principal. And the other 10% that you're saving, you use that for your reasonable taxation for your trust. Does that make sense? Okay? So that's why you would do that. Now, under the expense side, we have 5 options that we exercise in assisting individuals. Yes? Okay. So that's what it would cost on option 1. What it would cost an individual, $1,500 to get into the credit repair program, at least up until July. It becomes $2,000 in July. But in this time, it costs $1,500. The whole entire state, for all 5 of the trusts, it costs $75K to get all of the trusts. Most of you probably don't have $75K laying around waiting to give for somebody to set up you some trusts. So let's talk about how you can get $75K and get that taken care of. Option 2, you have a 720 credit score. You have a 720 credit score, and you're able to you have no blemishes. We can get all those blemishes removed off your whole entire 3 credit bureaus. We do that following a unique algorithm of your particular accounting and everything like that that's happening with your trust. We're able to get you, in 90 days, we're able to get you all blemishes cleared off of your 3 credit bureaus and all the blemishes removed, and go after the funding for you. For the 10K, nobody engages the investor until your blemishes are removed and also until you have at least a 720 credit score and above. Then they engage the investor. Now watch this.
I was going to say, let's show them, right here in San Diego, what it would cost.
Yes, go ahead. Let me show you what it costs to set this and stuff. If you were in both here in Penrose and John charged for the same estate that we just talked to you about, $250K to set that up. The other in New York, $195,000. Another one just for one trust alone is $55,000 just for one trust. We have made it advantageous for our folks to be able to afford this whole entire package, including if some of you want to start a 501c3, we throw in the 501c3 as addition to the 508c, we throw that in for free. Okay? And this particular one right here, the 75K, want to let you know the other option that's available of how that's obtained, okay? Because most people, when they see $75,000, it's pretty scary for the average person, all right? We're going to go after the whole funding for you, for your whole trust setup can get funded without you having to do that out of your own pocket. But there are some people who are capable of doing that out of their own pocket, and they're able to do that through their 401k, pension plans, savings, retirements, those kind of things. They can literally go after the whole amount. But let me tell you what the third option is. The third option is that you can get one trust if you need it. So, for example, you need a family trust. Get that out of the way. You may want to get that for $25,000. But for the Adventists, we have a special pricing for you for $20K. And by the way, for those of you, because you're here, we're also going to knock off $10K to get your whole entire estate set up for $65K. We're not going to do that for everybody in the general public. We don't do that, but we're going to do that as a special pricing for our Adventist family, okay? Don't publish that. Oh, that's right. It's on social media. What am I talking about? No. All right. $65K instead of the $75K, $65K. All right? That's all for trusts, plus a capital holding company, plus an S Corp, plus a 508C ministry trust, plus a family trust, business trust, investment trust, and also a 501c3 totally set up. Y'all, I can tell you right now, completely organized. And the educational training up to a year so that you learn everything that's component that's contained in your trust. We have trust class, trust certification courses, all that throughout the entire year. You're never, listen to me carefully, you're never, ever going to get that through any lawyer setting up a living trust. You don't believe me? I can ask any one of you to have a living trust right now. How much money you think you have in your living trust? Did the lawyer ever educate you about how you can put money in your trust? Did they? Anybody? Archie, did they ever ask you that? You ever say how you can, your money can? Uh-huh. Okay. All right. Every 2 years. Watch this. What if I told you that at the level of when you are engaged with Succeed, and we say that we want to help your trust to make some money, and if I told you that we're going to have you to put an extra $10K aside to help someone to be able to get the $10K, to help them get their trust, and by your doing that, you're going to get paid $20K for the $10K that you invested in that in 90 days. So every time that you help someone to get a trust, whether it's one person or two people, every time you do that, your money doubles every 90 days to do that. That's how your trust makes money. Now, your trust engages Succeed. So say your trust, your family trust, you want to put up $10K extra. You got your estate set up and everything like that. Now you're prepared to let your trust make some money for your family. Is that right? So you say, okay, I want to help $10K and put $10,000 to help somebody to get their business trust and everything like that set up for themselves, okay? Because without that $10K infusion, they were not able to do that. So you become the lender and you allow them to give that $10K for them to do that. So watch this. Succeed has a relationship with you and your trust. Then we engage the borrower to invoice them $20K. They pay back $20K to Succeed, and we pay the lender back $20K. Remember, they're going to get $150,000 worth of business credit cards, and they're going to get $150,000 funding. That's how they're going to purchase their trust. They're going to purchase the $75,000 to $65,000 through that acquisition of obtaining the loan and also between obtaining the funding for their trust. And so they're able to give you $20K of that to pay you back for the $10K that you gave them. And watch this. Every 3 months, I dare you to go do the math. Some of y'all good mathematicians, you can do that on your paper right now or on your calculators on your phone. I want you to take $10K. I want you to listen to me. This is May, month of May. June is coming next month. Then there's July. Then there's August. So that's 3 months from now, this week. Then you got August, September, October, you got until October, and then you got November, December. 2.5 more cycles left in this year. Y'all, I'll just be honest with you. We overpromise, we underpromise and overdeliver. Most people do have their stuff back in less than 90 days, but we tell you 90 days, but they get their money back doubled in 90 days. And you'll see it in real time. So a person puts up $10K to help a person. They get $20K back in 90 days. They say, you know what? I love this. I see how this was done. I want to help 2 more people do the same. So can I put up $20,000 to help 2 more people? And Succeed is going to say, yes, let's do that. We'll help you do that. And then it comes back $40K in 90 days. And then you say, well, you know what? I love what that happened. Can I do 3 or can I do 4? And you say, yes. And guess what? 90 more days, $80K comes back. In other words, rinse and repeat. This process If you do the calculations and the numbers, over the course of a year alone, you have an engagement of quite a financial stash that has been made for your trust. Your 401k would never do this. We got people who are coming off of Walmart jobs and things like that, doing this type of strategy, getting their credit cleaned up and everything like that, getting in position. And you've been saving, some of you in your 401k for 20 years, 10 years, or since 2008 when you lost money and now you're gaining money back in your, through your brokerage or whatever in your 401ks and matching funds and all that. This person who comes off of a Walmart job or out of prison with no credit score will outperform your 401k in less than 2 years that it took you 20 years to accumulate the income that you have in your 401k. Every 3 months, every 3 months, every 3 months, every 3 months, doubling their income. And by the time within 2 years, their account is worth over $1 million.
Let me jump in on that.
All right.
And the reason why we do this through a trust, through a family trust or investment trust or a business trust or a private foundation, is because there is no capital gain.
No capital gains.
Listen to me.
Praise God.
You take $10,000 and make $20,000 in your public SSN number, you already know that you're about to get 30% of that away.
Absolutely.
That defeats the whole entire purpose.
Yes.
Because the trust is not a capital gain, it has no capital gain,
Right.
then we can double money by helping other people.
Right.
It's just that simple. You're just helping somebody else get in a position. So if you don't have the $75,000, we can help you get the $150,000 so that you can pay the $75,000 and then have money left to actually help other people invest in other files.
Absolutely. And that is the art of it. Y'all, I'm going to tell you something. In the trust world, I want you to hear me. In the trust world, there's not a system like this that exists right now. And I'm on public record, and I'm saying that on YouTube or wherever y'all streaming live, there is nothing else like what we have going on right here. This has blessed so many families with their trust. We have discovered this is a way your trust can earn income for you. Watch this. You will have instructions in your trust agreement, in your trust materials. You will have information in there for your successors, brothers, sisters, uncles, cousins, children, to be able, long after you're gone, to still do the rinse and repeat of this process and still be making money for your trust long after you're gone. I want y'all to hear me. Did y'all hear that?
Right. So what John is
You
saying,
can't do that with any other trust.
right.
It's not allowed.
So you,
All right.
you have a 2020 business vision here.
Question
And-
back here?
yes,
Go ahead.
ma'am.
Get you. Hold on.
It's 0% interest for 6 to 18 months. It's a regular credit card, depending on your credit score.
Yeah. Most people, when you have been having trusts that are making money for you, most of those credit cards, most of the loan, the strategy that we have is already paid off. For the $150,000 that you're engaged to one person with, the $75,000, when you pay the $75,000 or $65,000 in your case, in you guys' cases here, you will automatically be able to put money aside of the other $75,000, in this case, $85,000. If you do 65 to set it up, the other $85,000 that you would have, you would start helping somebody else to get their trust. And at the same time, you set money aside to pay back the loan, which is $20K. And then from there, you would be able to pay down on that loan continuously and accelerate the payments as your account is doubling every 3 months. Okay? You can use part of that revenue to pay down on your loan until it's paid off, and then you still have the revenue on the side being made. Go right ahead.
You said this plan is unique. How different it is from the one that Mr. Madoff had?
How different is that Mr. Leo had? I'm sorry. Huh? Oh, Madoff. Madoff. Madoff was a Ponzi scheme. This is not a Ponzi scheme.
You're investing in a real business.
Yeah.
That you can see on the Secretary of State.
Right.
You're investing in something that's tangible.
Right.
You're investing in people, not nothing that you can't see.
Right.
Okay. So when we take the actual your investment, the client has to do steps 1 through 15 first before we even can consider taking your money. That means they're fully vested okay? We go into the contract with you, not the client that you're investing in. So we pay you no money back. So there's no scheming here. Now, people ask me all the time, well, what happens if the client don't pay me my money back? Well, I have ways to file taxes against that loss. So I don't lose any money at all, period.
Right.
Okay? I always gain in a loss.
Yeah.
You know how to file taxes. You know how to gain in a loss. Okay? So I never lose money.
So
somebody doesn't pay me $20,000 back,
Hey.
there's a 1099 issue to that business.
Right.
And I don't lose my money. I get it back on the tax return.
Right. So the client is always being engaged, and the client is always up to date, and the lender is always transparently aware of every aspect of those transactions that's going on. There is never this, let me tell y'all something. Didn't you just say you check on it? Who was that said you check on your account every 2 or 3 years? Listen to me, y'all. You can look at this every 3 months.
You can look at it every day.
Every day if you want. Most brokers will tell you, oh, we don't look at it because of the volatility of the stock market. And how often do we, even as Adventist Christians, we trust the brokers who are not Christian, who are not Adventists, but we trust them fully to work with your money that God has put you as a steward in charge of, and you don't even see it for a year or two, and you trust them fully, and you don't know what they're doing until they report to you. You go and ask them, how am I doing? How's my account doing? And you're only getting about the most 10, 15, 20%. We just told you a formula that you're doubling your money 100% every 3 months, and you're scared?
And
If you're scared, listen to me, hold on. If you're, because I'm gonna talk real for y'all, okay? You can be scared all you want to and do absolutely nothing. And guess what? You won't lose any income with us at all. All right? Your account is the loser, not ours. Keep on investing in the broker. Like Tony said, you'll be broke, I guarantee you, because when the next stock market hits and you lost $40,000, $5,000, or $65,000 that you could have engaged this company right here, while you being on pins and needles, worrying about your account, worrying about your 401k and your matching funds and all that, people have passed you and tripled and quadrupled their money while you still wishing what's going to happen next.
And let me say where this
I'm just saying.
Let me say where this concept came from. Is
Real
anybody
estate.
in real estate in here? Does anybody do real estate?
Anybody in real estate?
Anybody in real estate? Nobody?
Except for
Okay, well in real estate.
Alex? Yep.
No, you buy. Well, I say when you're in real estate, are you an investor in real estate? Have
Right.
you invested into rental properties or anything? So the concept came from real estate.
Yes, same concept.
Basically, what we did was, hey, it takes money to buy a property, and then you're going to have to put money into the property. Am I right?
Right.
Right? To renovate it. And then you're going to do one of two things. You're either going to get the equity out the property or you're going to sell it. All
Or
we're
get a
doing
renter.
here is creating a business, putting the actual collateral into the business, and pulling the equity out of it. That's all we're doing on a tangible asset
Right.
that you can verify on the Secretary of State.
Right. And that's, yeah.
So that's the difference between, what everybody else is doing. We believe in investing in people, not companies that we have no control over.
Right.
And a lot of people will put their money directly into the stock market, and they're not checking